my name is Stella Fan, and I'll be talking to you about gun violence today. How many of you attend school? Okay, well, as someone who spends a majority of their time on school campus, isn't it quite terrifying that somebody could walk on campus and open fire on a crowd? I myself can actually remember the first time I found out about a school shooting. I was in the 6th grade, and the news about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting had just gotten out, and at the age of 11, I realized that there was a possibility that I could be a part of gun violence. In this speech, I will be discussing the increase of gun violence in American society, the reason there is so much gun violence, and how increased gun regulations will keep Americans safe. To begin, let's talk about how there is an increase of gun violence in American society. There have been many cases of gun violence in American society in the last 2 decades. Here I have a map published in an article titled A Guide to Mass Shootings in America by Mark Folleman, Gavin Arison, and Deanna Pan on motherjones.com that was last updated February 27, 2020. This map actually has data from Mother Jones's mass shooting database that shows the mass shootings dating all the way back to 1982 to 2020. To give you a little bit more of a perspective, according to data last updated on April 19, 2020 on gunviolencearchive.org, a nonprofit organization that keeps track of mass shootings in the country, there was a total of 337 mass shootings reported in 2018 and a total of 418 mass shootings reported in 2019. That means there was an increase of 81 more mass shootings last year than the one previous. Looking at all this data, we can only predict that mass shootings won't be stopping anytime soon. Now, onto the reason there is so much gun violence. One of the main reasons there is so much gun violence is because there are so many assault weapons circulating around America. An assault weapon is a legal term in the United States that describes certain types of firearms, mainly semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns, which have certain features and uses detachable magazines. Along with there being a lot of assault weapons in the hands of civilians, we don't actually know how many of them are out there. According to an article on thetrace.org titled How Many Assault Weapons Do Americans Own by Alex Yablon on September 22nd, 2018, the numbers are hazy for 2 main reasons. First, there is no official criteria for what qualifies as an assault rifle, and the government doesn't detail data on the different types of firearms owned by Americans. But not having any knowledge on how many assault weapons are in the hands of civilians, we don't have the knowledge of the level of preparedness we need in order to protect ourselves in case of a mass shooting. Another reason there is so much gun violence is because not every state has full services to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, also known as the NICS. According to the reports published on May 3rd, 2016 on FBI.gov, the NICS provides full services to federal firearms licensees in 30 states, 5 U.S. territories, and the District of Columbia. The NICS provides partial services to 7 states, and the remaining 13 perform their own checks through the NICS. By not providing the full services of the NICS, this creates the risk of firearms falling into the wrong hands. Moving on, let's now discuss how increasing gun regulations will help keep Americans safe. To keep Americans safe, we need to require universal background checks that go through the NICS. According to an article on thetrace.org titled Do Universal Gun Background Checks Reduce Shootings by Alex Yablon on September 11, 2019, collectors who occasionally set up gun booths or at gun shows or individuals who advertise a couple of weapons on classified websites such as arms list don't have to have their customers vetted for. Now, I understand a lot of people might still try to sell their guns privately without going through the NICS, but at least by requiring universal background checks, the government will have some sort of record of who the gun was registered to at one point, and which can give us an idea as to who might have possession of them if they were to be sold without going under a background check. Along with requiring universal background checks, the age to buy guns needs to be increased. According to a study published on nimh.nih.gov by the National Institution of Mental Health on February 14, 2020, though the brain might be done growing in size, it doesn't fully mature until around the mid to late 20s. By raising the age to buy guns, it helps keep guns out of the hands of people who are not mentally mature enough to handle weapons, and it lowers the risk of gun violence. Another regulation that should be in place is that assault weapons should be banned and existing owners should have to be required to register their weapon. If assault weapons were to be banned and if existing owners were to get them registered, these highly dangerous weapons would be kept track of and hopefully not fall into the hands of bad people. Banning assault weapons would reduce the amount of hands that could get a hold of such weapons to do harm, and having them registered could help us figure out who is at fault if they were to fall into the wrong hands. So to wrap this up, we have now discussed the increase of gun violence in American society, the reason there is so much gun violence, and how increased gun regulations will help keep Americans safe. I hope all of you agree with me that we as a society need to push for more regulations, such as requiring universal background checks, the age to buy guns to be raised, and to have assault weapons banned, and to have existing owners have to register them to be able to keep their weapon. By pushing for these regulations, we can hopefully prevent another 11-year-old from realizing they could be a victim of gun violence. Thank you.